welcome to the Beware the Moon podcast. My name is Hannah, and today we're going to be talking about Zach Cregger's new movie, Weapons. I've been so excited to see this movie. I have been on vacation the last whole month. Before that, I was sick. Before that, I was on vacation again. So it's just been like a hectic, chaotic summer for me. So I kind of wanted to do something more newer and something that I've just been looking forward to. And I think a lot of people have been looking forward to Weapons. It's been out for kind of a hot minute now. I know it came out while I was down in Florida. So I just didn't have time to go see it on my own on vacation because I was vacationing with my mother, who absolutely hates horror movies. And then also with my best friend, who is pregnant. So she's having a hard time going places, but also she has kids, so obviously that's not something we're gonna make time and go do together when she has small children. But I've been looking forward to this movie. I have been very careful about spoilers. Luckily, I went and saw it how I wanted to see it, which was completely blind. I wanted to know as little as possible going to see it, just because I wanted to be surprised. I think I saw the first trailer, and then I saw the Benedict Wong, basically little scene that they played, little spoiler there, but it didn't really spoil much. It was more just a scene that happens in the movie. It didn't explain anything. It just kind of deepened the mystery, which I think was very smart on the marketing team's kind of end. And I apologize for all the dog you might be hearing clinking. I'm house sitting right now, and the dogs I'm house sitting are not cooperating very well with anything, let alone the podcast. Anyhow, I wanted to be as blind as possible going in, so I could just be pleasantly surprised or disappointed. I have to say I was very pleasantly surprised. It's very interesting because one of the first things I thought watching the movie was this was written by someone who was hurt by a family member. And I don't just mean oh, my family member doesn't have the same political views as me. I think a lot of people take that and they get hurt by that. And to me, that's, you're living in a very sheltered, very padded world if that is your familial hurt, is your family doesn't agree with your political views or even your personal beliefs or your lifestyle choices. If your family is still willing to talk to you and is nice to you despite having different beliefs, that's not familial hurt just because they don't agree with you. I'm talking about hurt, physical hurt, deep trauma is what I'm talking about. When I saw this movie, that's what I thought of. I thought this movie was written by someone who has experienced that. I have yet to mention this on the podcast before, but when I was a child, I was sex trafficked. And it was my, an aunt who had married into my family. She was the one who trafficked us. And that is a lot of, watching this movie, I was reminded so much of what it's like to be a kid in a family where there's this big dark secret and someone, my parents were great about it. They found out, they did whatever they could to keep us away from her. They were very proactive, and they were very much on our side. Watching this movie though, I was this is what it's like to be in that situation and have no one on your side. And it's so rare to see that depicted anywhere. Especially I think the truest depiction of it is gonna be in a horror movie. And this horror movie is really more a fairy tale. And once we get into the spoiler section, you'll understand that more. But this movie is very much a fable, and it's very much it just has this it feels unrealistic to be a kid and you're not seen. But this happens all the time. There are so many children who are just unseen, living in hell. Zach Cregger's, I found this out after I watched the movie. Zach Cregger said that this movie is very personal to him because he wrote it with how he felt as a kid in mind. His dad was an alcoholic, and so he was yeah, very much. It's I'm going and living out this normal life, and then I go home to this violence and this pain and all these things. And so that makes no sense from the top, but as we get into the spoilers section, it'll make more sense. I also want to point out that this movie, Zach Cregger's, is very, like, he's been very clear that he doesn't want to give, like, a lot of clear answers on this movie. So, like, it's very ambiguous what this movie means, what all the symbolism is. And he's also said, like, not everything has a meaning. Like, some of it I just thought of and threw it in there, and it just felt right. I don't necessarily know if there's a meaning to it. So, there's some of that in this movie as well. So if you're someone who, like, you need all of the answers, you need everything to be clear, you want, like, exposition dump, this is not gonna please you. Like, this movie has none of that, which I love. I love getting an answer to the main questions and having none of the little details. Like, I think that's so fun. And this movie does that, and it does that really, really well. So if you're someone who needs all those little answers, this movie's going to frustrate you. I would also say on, like, a scary level, to me, it's like a 2. But one of my favorite movies is, like, Evil Dead 2013. So, and that one I think is very scary. I will say this movie has, like, the fear in this movie is more of jump scares, but they're not unearned. I think you get unearned jump scares when, like, someone turns a corner and something pops out and there's no suspense built up beforehand. That to me is an unearned jump scare, and I'm like, this movie is just cheap and it's not trying at all. That's what I think of when something like that happens. This movie has jump scares, but they are, like, suspense built up beforehand. And that is where most of its scares come from. However, on the horrifying scale, I would say this movie is very horrifying. I mean, there's some really gruesome, gory stuff in here, but I think just the subject matter, like, if you unplug from the fact that, like, this is a movie and you put yourself in the shoes of anyone in this community or anyone who has a loved one in this person's classroom, because the main overarch of the story is that one night at 2:17 on a Wednesday, 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, 17 of 18 of these kids in this one specific third grade classroom got out of their beds and just ran off, and no one found them. And so, sorry, it's not that no one found them, it's they never came back, right? So, and that's important for later, but that's, like, so horrifying to think, like, I could send my kid to school today and tomorrow they might not be there because I don't know where they are. My kid can just get up and leave and go, and, like, I don't know where they went. And if you've ever been, like I said, I was sex trafficked, so this is a little, like, more closer to home for me. Like, any kind of movie that deals with, like, kids and disappearances and just, like, trauma, child trauma, like, that always hits closer to home for me. And that's kind of why I started liking horror movies and why I'm doing this podcast in the first place. It's because I want to, like, I really like horror movies because I relate to them, right? Like I said earlier, like, if your biggest trauma is that people don't believe the same things you believe and their views aren't the same views you have, like, you're living in a very cushy life. Like, that is amazing for you. Like, good, like, to me, that is nothing. Like, I've literally had to run for my life before from people who were giants to me, because I was 3 years old when I was trafficked. And I have that very vivid memory of naked running through the woods from people who were supposed to be trustworthy and from people who were supposed to care for me, and they were doing the opposite. And so, like, part of why I do this is because I love horror. I think it's I very much connect with people who are running for their life, people who are trying to figure things out. Like, this is very much a mystery, this movie. And I think the trailers and all the marketing and such kind of portrayed that well. It's a horror and a mystery. And the horror, like, it's so funny because people, I don't understand. There are some people who wouldn't consider this movie a horror, which it's very gruesome. There's some very gruesome instances in this movie. Also, I don't understand what could be more horrifying than your kid goes missing and you have no leads. You can do nothing to track them. You are just told to sit down and wait, and hopefully some random stranger will figure this out for you. That's the most horrifying situation to be put in, I think. So people who are like, this isn't horror, I'm like, I think you just don't have a good understanding of what horror is, because horror is anything that is terrifying to anyone, anything that is scary to anyone. Like, I think that there's broadly appealing horror, and then there's horror that's very niche. I think this is a broadly appealing horror. Like, if you're put in this position where that's your kid or your sibling, you're terrified, especially if that's your sibling, because then you're like, is this going to happen to me? Is this going to happen to my classmates? And it's horrifying to be Alex. He's the one kid who doesn't run away with the rest of the kids. And the police talk to him, and he's like, no, I have no idea. Like, they, like, it's so cool because the movie opens with, like, a little girl narrating that this thing happened, right? And her narration is like, oh, yeah, and the police talked to Alex a ton, and they were like, was there a plan? And he said, if there was a plan, I didn't hear it. And they asked if there was a show everybody watched, and he said, if there was, I didn't watch it. And so there's no answers for the parents in this situation, and that is so, like, that's horrifying. Like, I just want you to take yourself out of your life and the way you're living and put yourself in that predicament where your kid just got out of your house in the middle of the night and never came back, and no one knows where the fuck your kid went. Like, that's horrifying. So I think this movie's scare is really, like, mental and psychological more than it is, like, physical scares. And, like, there is some chase sequences, obviously. Like, if you watched the Benedict Wong scene online, that's a chase sequence. And it's not the only one. So, like, there are multiple chase sequences in this film. This film is also not, like, really traditional linear storytelling, which is really cool. Personally, I like it. So you have, like, different perspectives of different characters, and they kind of overlap. And one of the really cool things about this movie is you'll see something from one character's perspective, and it's cuts off at a certain point because that's what mattered to them. And then the next character, you see that same scene from their side and their perspective, and you're like, oh, that conversation didn't stop there. It carried on. Like, my favorite instance of that is Principal Miller talking to Justine Gandy, who is the teacher who her students went missing. She's like, hey, I think you should go do a wellness check on Alex. And Principal Miller is like, I told you to stay away from him. I told you not to go near there. Like, that's very inappropriate, and it makes you look bad, and all these things. And so from Justine's perspective, that's where the conversation stops. But then later in the movie, we get that same scene from Principal Miller's perspective. And he carried on to say, I'll call his parents in for, like, a face-to-face, and I'll double-check. Like, I'll make sure. Because she had seen some stuff that was weird at Alex's house. So she was like, he's putting me off, because he was. But from his perspective, no, he really did, like, follow up. And so I think it's very cool that we get this, like, very flawed storytelling and these very flawed perspectives from these multiple sources. And it's very much colored from what they viewed as important, what they were doing, who they are as a person. And so it's just very interesting. So it's not a traditionally told story where it's like, this happened, and then this, and then this, and then this. Like, you get a lot of overlap, which I think is really fun and super important to, like, informing us who these characters are. Also, my apologies if any Discord blips kind of slipped through. Anyhow, so that's kind of, like, my overview. I'm, like, 15 minutes in. Like, this is going to be such a long podcast. But that's my overview of this movie. I think it is really good. And I do think you should see it with an audience of people or a group of people. So if you can go see it in theaters, do that. And if not, then have, like, a watch party for it. Because, I was really glad. I usually go see movies by myself in the afternoon when I'm doing them for the podcast. Because then I can just kind of lock in and react how I want to react. And I don't have to worry about other people because I laugh really, really loud. But luckily, like, most of the times I was laughing in this film. And there are some, like, dark humor instances in this film. It's not like this whole film was hilarious. Like, there's some really tense things. There's some really upsetting things. But, like, Zach Cregger's apparently, his background is The Whitest Kids on the Block, which was, like, a comedy sketch group. So, definitely there's some laughs in this. There's definitely some dark humor in this. And it was nice because, like, I was in the theater with maybe 5 other people. And everybody was kind of laughing the same times I was laughing, and everybody felt comfortable laughing. And there was a lady a couple of rows ahead of me. I could hear her make a comment like, oh, freak no, every once in a while, which I thought was really fun. So I would definitely recommend going to see this in the theaters if you can. I mean, you got to rush there because it's like probably almost done being in theaters, but yeah, highly recommend this movie. Personally, again, like why I started this podcast, sorry, I'm a little ADD, so things kind of go all over the place, is so that I can inform other people who have gone through trauma of different traumatic triggering things in movies. So we do have like a lot of people who are addicts of some kind. Justine herself is an alcoholic. You got Paul, the police officer, who's recovering alcoholic. You have James, who is straight up a tweaker. Dude is smoking meth. On quote unquote, like on screen, because like obviously they're not letting the actors smoke meth, but like that's what he's, that's what's happening in the film. And then also, same guy has a bunch of needles that he straight up uses, not on himself necessarily, but actually on the police officer. Sorry, that's a spoiler. Anyway, so there's that. Also, the kids are like there's no like physical abuse happening of these kids. Like, so you don't have to worry about that aspect. The kids are definitely like in peril, but not in the way you would think. Personally, it didn't trigger me. And there's no like sexual assault of any kind that goes on in this film. So that's really nice. That kind of stuff I find very triggering. So it's really nice that none of that happens. So. And with that all said, I'm just going to cut right into the movie, the spoiler section. So, I'm telling you, if it's not one dog just like doing things, it's the other. Anyway, spoiler section. This movie, like I said, starts off with like a kid's narration. And I love it because it's like, oh yeah, this happened, and all the police and all the authorities and all the head people hushed it up because the police couldn't figure it out, and so they find it really embarrassing that nobody solved this crime, so they just kind of shoved it under the rug. They stopped talking about it. They took away records of it, but the townspeople know this is what really happened. And so she explains one morning at 2:17 a.m. 17 out of 18 kids in this third grade classroom just got up and like low-key Naruto ran into oblivion, like a void somewhere, like, and they never came back. And so the one kid who didn't, the police questioned him. He had no answers for them. They questioned the teacher. She had no answers for them. And the school stayed closed for a month while people were investigating. But at that point, they kind of had to open the school again because there were other kids in other classes who this didn't happen to them, and they're fine. So, like, they still need to learn. So they put kids back in classrooms, which I've heard other people talk about this, and they're kind of like very judgmental on it. Like, they're like, yeah, they just straight up reopened the school and blah, blah, blah. And like, I mean, what else are you supposed to do? Like, when you have a trauma in your life, the actual worst thing you can do is just sit and stew on it, like ruminate and focus on it. The best thing you can do is get therapy, get some help, someone who's qualified to help you, because not all therapists are, not all forms of help work. Sometimes you got to try multiple therapies. Sometimes you got to try multiple therapists. Like, not everyone is going to have the tools you need, even among therapists, which is like a crazy thing for a lot of people to think about, but that's true. And I myself have been through therapy pretty much all my life, on and off. And so there are some therapists who are qualified to help me and have tools that can help me. And some are unfortunately just like a waste of my time. And so, but the worst thing you can do is nothing. That's the worst thing you can do is nothing. So opening the school back up to put these kids back in so that they can get some sense of like normalcy again. And life does go on after trauma and tragedy. Like, that is the reality of it, and it has to, or else tragedy and trauma is the end of the story, and that's not what you want. So anyway, they open the school back up, and Mrs. Gandy's one student, Alex, he gets put into a different third grade class, because right before they open up the school, they have this big, huge meeting with all the parents whose kids went missing, and the narration says something like to try to help them teach them how to be sad or whatever, which I think is so cute. Like, the way it's phrased is very much like a child phrasing it. So I think that's awesome. But basically, yeah, like, it's kind of like a grief share with everyone. And in the middle of this, Josh Brolin, who plays Archer Graff, is his character's name. Archer stands up, and he's like, I don't want to hear anything more from you, Mr. Proctor guy. I want to hear from her, and he points at Miss Gandy. He's like, she hasn't been talking, and we want to know what the fuck happened. Like, how is it that 17 out of 18 of her students left at the same time on the same night? And he's like, I want to know what was happening in that classroom. Which, valid. Personally, I would be asking that too. I also... I've had some weird life experiences, obviously, and one of them is a friend of mine in high school. He died because of hypnotism, basically, and it's a huge, long story. I don't want to get too much into it, but his principal was hypnotizing him and teaching him how to hypnotize himself, and he did it at the wrong time, passed out, and crashed his truck and died. And so, like, for me, I'd be like, yeah, I want to know what was happening in that classroom. Like, I have this, like, informed trauma, like, this informed tragedy that I'm like, maybe she's fucking hypnotizing these kids. Like, they're thinking, like, brainwashing, and, like, yeah, that's kind of a form of hypnotism. Brainwashing could be it. She could just be brainwashing these kids in the classroom. And so I think that's kind of one of the underlying, like, there's not, like, a clear theme in this film, right? Like, I've heard that some people are thinking it's an allegory for school shootings, but it's not. I mean, it just really isn't. That kind of falls apart at some point. But I think at this point, it's very much, like, I was like, oh, the theme of this movie is, like, you know, what is happening in classrooms? Like, are your kids being informed the right way? Like, maybe this person is someone shady and I shouldn't have entrusted my kid to them, but that's just kind of like one of the risks you take if you're not, like, homeschooling your kid. And so, like, there's a lot of that fear going around. That's why a lot more people are homeschooling their kid, because they're like, tragedies are happening in schools. What are my kids being taught? Who are these strangers I'm entrusting my children to? And, like, all these other kids could also be bad influences on them. And we do see eventually that Alex is bullied in this classroom. So, like, maybe that's a thing. Like, you just never know what's going on in a school and what a kid is, like, internalizing for survival's sake. Like, I think very much, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, when we meet Alex and see, because Alex's viewpoint is the last viewpoint. When we see things from his viewpoint, he's being bullied by other kids in the class, and he just kind of says nothing, and that is a survival tactic. Like, if I just keep my head down, it'll blow over, and I won't have to deal with it. Especially, there are certain personalities, and people are just born with certain personalities where they don't like to deal with things. They would rather shove it under the rug, treat it like it's not a big deal. And so you just never know what's happening in schools and when other people have your kids, right? And maybe it is something horrifying. And that, again, is just one of the fears of being a parent. Like, I'm not a parent, but if I ever had a kid, that would be a really big fear for me, because that's part of my trauma, and I would have to probably do some work to work through that at that point. But anyhow, so Miss Justine Gandy gets up there. Not Candy, it's Gandy with a G. She gets up there, and she's basically like, there's nothing I can say to make this better, which is the exact thing you would say in that situation if you were Miss Gandy. Like, that's the wisest thing you could say, is like, there's nothing I can say that's going to make this better. Like, I don't have answers for you. I want to know just as much as you want to know. And everybody's kind of like, you're a liar, that's bullshit. And so things start getting kind of like cray-cray. So Principal Miller steps in, and I'm guessing like maybe a guidance counselor or something, and they get Miss Gandy to her car safely, and they tell her, drive straight. They're like, the counselor's like, do you have anyone you can stay with? And she's like, no. And he's like, then drive straight home. She does not. She stops at a liquor store, which I was like, okay, valid. But secondly, I'm like, how do you not have liquor at home already? Because, like, this has been going on for a fucking month already. Like, if I were her, I would just not be able to do anything. Like, this would just be driving me up the walls. And, like, they showed in the opening, like, they're bringing in canine units, and there's tons of cops looking, and, like, they find nothing. Everything kind of breaks apart at some point. And so this would be driving me nuts if I were her. So it's so funny because this is the first time we see James. James is the tweaker. He's like, hey, ma'am, like he opens the door for her to the liquor store and he's asking her for money because he needs to buy a bus ticket to go see his brother. He asks her when she goes in and when she comes out. And both times she's like, no, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. Which is so funny because James is such a tweaker. Like, he's such an addict. And, like, they portray him so well in this movie. Like, addict behavior. I've been around a lot of addicts in my life. Like, I have family. I've done ministry to addicts. Like, I've literally had family members die of overdoses, alcoholism, like, alcohol poisoning, and all that kind of stuff. So, like, I know addict behavior. And this is such addict behavior. And I'll get back to that later. But Justine goes from the liquor store. She buys 2 bottles of vodka. I was like, you go, girl. I get you. She goes to her car. And she drives home. And I was like, bruh, if I were you, I would just drive myself somewhere random, like outside of the city. Like, go to a different city, park at a park, get in the back of my little RAV, and get drunk there, and then drive home. Because she's not allowed to go to work right now. Like, there's nothing for her to do. Her whole class is missing. So, and people in this town want you dead. But she doesn't do that. She goes home, and she's, like, trying to make herself some drinks. She's trying to relax. And then she hears, like, a knock on her door. And she does such a smart thing. Like, as a person who has had death threats, as a person who is paranoid, as a person who has lived having random people knock on your door in the middle of the night, people you don't even know. Like, I totally get her. She's so smart because she turns off her TV and then she calls out. And then there's no answer. And she gets a little bit closer, but she doesn't go right up to the peephole. And that's very wise because sometimes people are looking in through your peephole and, like, they'll just, like, this obviously has never happened to me, but it's happened to other people where in situations like this where people are threatening your life, where people hate you, like you're the pariah of the town, they'll be waiting at the door for the peephole to go dark and then they'll shoot through the door. So she kind of, like, tries to get a response before she looks through the peephole. When none comes, she finally does look through the peephole and there's no one there, and then she peeks out her little curtains and no one's there, and she's kind of like, huh. So then a few minutes later, like, there's, like, a pounding on her door, and she goes, Jesus fucking what? And then opens her door, and on the side of her car, someone had taken red paint and wrote witch, just, like, really big on the side of her car. And so she can't get it off. She's very upset. She goes to work, and she has a meeting with Principal Miller, and basically he's explaining to her, like, you're not fired, and you're still going to get paid, and you still have your insurance, but you don't have a job anymore. And so she's upset, obviously, because she's like, I need to work. Like, I need to have some kind of, like, normalcy. And he's like, we just saw that we have some very emotional parents in this town, and we cannot have you working here, like, actively. Like, that's just not gonna happen. And so she asks to speak to Alex, and he's like, I've already told you can't do that. And as someone who has worked with children, like, I get what he's saying. Like, he's like, it's gonna look bad, it's not good, and he is traumatized as well, and he needs to get back to normalcy. Like, we're trying to untraumatize this kid because him being the last of his class is a traumatizing thing, probably. And she's like, I get that, but, like, and then she says something that makes so much sense to me. She says, you know, we're the only ones left. And so, like, I get that. Like, as a survivor of something, you want to talk to other survivors of that same thing. Like, you just do. Especially if you're in the exact same situation. Like, I get that. But he's kind of like, I mean, you're an adult. He's not. We're going to put his needs above your needs. So I get that this would help you, but it's, you're an adult. Like, you can go get help yourself, which is kind of like, yeah, I guess. But anyway, so she does the unwise thing. Oh, wait, not yet. This time she goes to the police to report the vandalism, she sees a police officer and kind of like waves at him. And then later that night, she's at a bar and he comes in, and you don't get like, one thing that I love about this movie is it's very well written. You can kind of like infer things and kind of like pick stuff up, but there's nothing like exclusively spelled out for you about like these interrelationships and these personal relationships. So like she's talking to him, and clearly they're like, he's trying to stay away from alcohol. And so I'm like, okay, so that could be something. And later on we find out like he is a recovering alcoholic. She is an alcoholic. Right now, she's drinking. She's been drinking, like, pretty much half the time she's on screen, she's drinking. And, like, I get it. She's gone through some shit. But apparently this is, like, a normal thing for her. And so, like, the way Paul's talking to her, it kind of infers that, like, she's always had a drinking problem. Which, and then Josh Brolin's character kind of reaffirms that later, because she's had DUIs. And so, she's just a troubled person, which I love that we have imperfect characters, because like literally it's so funny. Josh Brolin's character attacks her character verbally to the police because he's like, I mean, obviously she's a troubled lady. She's had a DUI. And I'm like, all right, that is a big fucking leap. Like DUI to kidnapping children. That is a massive leap, my dude. But, like, people will just kind of use anything to justify a witch hunt, and that's literally what's going on here, so I kind of love that. But anyway, back to, she's at the bar with Paul, this police officer, and she is like, have a drink, and he's like, no. And she's like, just one drink. And he's like, no. And then the next morning they're waking up in her bed. Like she's waking him up, he's in her bed. And so clearly, and he had said something about because she was like, what about you and Donna, are you guys good? And he was like, me and Donna are not happening right now. So, which is a lie. We find out that's a fucking lie. So he also has this like taped up finger, and she's like, what happened? And he's like, just a dumb work accident. So they wake up, she wakes him up, he's in her bed, then she drives him to his car, and she kind of is like trying to get information, it seems, on like the case and the progress of the case. And he's like, I'm not a detective, like I'm a beat cop, like I don't have that information for you, and even if I did, you should just leave it alone. You should just let it be in the police officer's hands. Like I can tell you that they're working overtime trying to figure this out, which I fucking hate. And like, I get it. I've had police friends over the years and just been, you know, like I've dealt with the police, and then like I've been on both sides of things, like where I'm the victim, and then also I'm hearing stories from these police officers about like different things in different cases. So like I get why police officers are like, we don't want you to get involved, because like, what if you do find the guy who took these kids? Are you gonna shoot him? Some people do that, and that makes things way more messy. Or if you're like, you know, you find your kid and the other 16 are missing, and you shoot the guy, we're up a creek, dude. Like, we need you to not do that. So, and then, like, on top of all of that, too, like, you sometimes, like, people will mess up evidence. Like, they'll stumble upon a scene or, like, a really important, you know, piece of evidence, and they'll low-key ruin it because they're not police officers and they've never dealt with stuff like that, so they don't know how to. And so they'll like smudge fingerprints or whatever. And so like I get why most of the time police officers are like, don't get involved. Like I understand that, because if you fuck up the investigation, that could be it for the investigation. If you get yourself involved and you get overly emotional and you do something stupid like shoot somebody, that's like a whole new thing now. You've created a whole other monster. So like I get why police officers say things like that, and they don't want you to get involved. However, there are certain things you can do as a private citizen that a police officer cannot do, right? Like, I'll explain a little bit more of that in a bit, right? So anyway, he tells her not to get involved, just trust the police. Never do that in real life, actually. And not because I'm saying police, like, don't, let me just clarify, actually. What I'm saying is, if you feel the need to privately investigate, do that. Do not just trust that the police will get it right, because a lot of times police are fucking lazy. You got to be up their asses about these things. Like, trust me, I know this from personal experience, because if you don't, and you don't jump on it right away, and you don't start collecting tons of your own evidence, they will let things slip through the cracks because they're just people doing a job. Like, to them, it's not as important as it is to you. And, like, even though, like, we see Josh Brolin's character talking to the chief of police or whoever the fuck he is, and the guy is like, I get it, because if it were my kid, I'd be in here too, and I'd be blah, 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 but, like, we don't have more information for you. And that's kind of how the police operate, and they're not allowed to do certain things, whereas you as a private citizen can go do that, and that evidence is legal, because if they go do that without a warrant or without a specific thing in place, they might throw that out in court. So, anyhow, all of that's to say, if you feel the need to investigate, go investigate. Just be careful. But, yeah, anyway, that's how she feels about it. She does a really dumb thing, though, and she literally stalks Alex. And I was just like, at this point, I was like, girl, you gonna get yourself in a whole lot of legal trouble. Like, oh my God. Like, if his parents notice you're stalking him, you are fucked 6 ways from Sunday. Because, like, already you're in hot water. People already think you did this. People already think you were involved in this in some way. So you stalking the only child who did not disappear that night looks really fucking bad for you. Like, that just looks bad. And then stalking any kid looks bad for anyone. Period. So I was like, really like, when she started doing this. She tries to talk to Alex. That doesn't work. She peeks through his windows and they're all covered with newspaper. So she goes around the house to see if they're all covered in newspaper, and they are. But the back of the house has, like, newspaper that's not quite flush, so she can kind of peek in, and she sees Alex's parents just sitting there, and it's a really good jump scare. And she's like, ah! And then she accidentally knocks over a shovel, which, like, bangs against a metal trash can, and it's like a metal snow shovel, so it's, like, really fucking loud. And so, like, she's like, well, if they didn't know, they do now. So she just peeks right through the window again, because, like, yeah, I mean, you're already fucked. Might as well, like, double down and try and get some info, you know, try and, like, see more clearly. But they didn't move. And so she's like, that's so weird. So she calls up Principal Milner. And she's like, tells him what happened. And he's like, you followed that kid? I told you to stay away from him. I told you not to talk to him. What is wrong with you? And she's like, no, but, like, something really serious is going on. And there's something really weird about that house and that family. And, like, you need to call someone, like CPS or something. And he's like, I'm going to do you the favor of pretending this conversation never fucking happened. And he hangs up the phone. And so, again, later on in the film, we see he has more of an in-depth conversation about the CPS and getting, which that stands for Child Protective Services if you're not in America. But he's like, we see from his perspective later on that he does, okay, I will try to call them in, blah, 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 blah. But her understanding is he brushed me off. Which, if you're her, that's a valid understanding. He's been brushing you off. That's what you believe. So she decides to, like, stake out the house, which is so stressful, because as she's staking it out, first of all, this girl is putting vodka into a big gulp so she can gulp it while she's sitting there, and I was, like, dying. At this point, you don't know she's had a DUI, so I was really like, girl, you gonna get arrested, you gonna get pulled over. Like, even if you're in the passenger seat and your keys are in the ignition, a cop can pull you over for a DUI, like, because you had intent to drive or whatever. So I'm like, girl, you were gonna be in so much trouble if someone called the police on you. And it's so cool, like, the house they picked is really creepy for Alex's house, but also it's at the end of a street, and the street it's at the end of is a crossing street. So, like, there's a big T, and at the point of the T where the top of the T and the stem of the T meet, that's where Alex's house is. So she's parked, like, where the stem of the T is so she can face the house and watch it, which is super cool. Really smart move on, like, the movie maker's part and stuff like that. Really fun. She's sitting there. She falls asleep, of course, in the middle of the night. And then the door opens to Alex's house. And let me tell you, every time the door to Alex's house opens, I get anxiety because it is pitch black in that fucking doorway. Like, you cannot see anything. So you never know what's going to pop out. And, like, at a certain point in this movie, I was like, okay, so it's a little bit more grounded in reality. like, I didn't think, like, a monster would pop out or, like, a serial killer or something. So, like, at some point, it was, like, a little bit less anxiety about that and more just, like, oh my god, what's gonna happen now? Holy shit. And so, as I'm like, oh my gosh, the door is opening, out comes this lady. And this lady has crazy hair, and she has something in her hand, and I was like, oh my god, is that a gun? For like, the first, like, 2 seconds I'm looking at her, I'm like, is that a gun? Is that a gun? Oh my gosh, she's just gonna go up and shoot her right in the fucking head. And so this lady, like, walks really fucked up. Like, she walks like she has, like, I don't know, wood limbs or something, man. Like, it's really, really good physical acting on the actress's part. This lady hobbles up to the car, tries the door, it's locked. So then she keeps walking past the car, and you're like, oh, thank God. But then you hear the back of the car open, and I just was like, no. I was like level 15, man. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh my God, she's just gonna come up and slit this lady's throat. Like, crazy, crazy, crazy. No. You see her arm reach around, and she's got scissors. And so I'm like, what the heck? She snips off some of the teacher's hair, some of Justine's hair, and takes that, and that's it. And then we switch to Archer's perspective, which is Josh Brolin's character. So I was like, what the fuck? And at this point, because I have no, like, personal experience in witchcraft, but because I have done some research and other people I know have had personal experience with witchcraft and they did it and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, this is some witchcraft shit. Like, they have witch written on the car. At this point, I was getting hip to, like, this is a witch. Which, not to be funny and punny, but that's kind of like why I wanted to watch this movie, is because all the trailers, I was like, what is the answer to this? Like, why did they do this? Like, the trailer and the marketing was so good, because I wasn't even in this movie for, like, the intensity of it or the scares or the horror of it. I was like, no, I need to know why these kids did this. Like, this is a really weird premise, and I have questions, and I need them to be answered. Like, I at least need to know why they did this, right? So at this point, I'm like, okay, clearly witchcraft is involved. However, Justine also, I think it's the night she gets drunk, but not with Paul. She has this weird dream of her walking into her classroom. And I immediately noticed, like, on the whiteboard, they have one giant section that's, like, a whole bunch of write-up about whales. And then on the other section, it's this write-up about parasites. And, like, my guess is, like, they're talking about parasites in the whales or whatever. Really weird. And on the back wall, there's also, like, one of those cool little fun, like, artsy boards that teachers do in elementary school. And, again, parasites. Whales and parasites on this board. And so I'm like, all right, so clearly parasite has something to do with this. And something that I find interesting is that pretty much all of these characters are kind of like, not all of them, but, like, a lot of them have either, like, the label of parasite on society, or they're doing something like they have a parasitic habit, right? Like, addicts are parasites. They just are. I'm so sorry if that offends you. I'm so sorry if you're like, and don't get me wrong, like, addicts, like, there's some of them who want to get better, and addicts can get better. It's a very hard road, though, and they literally have to change their mindset. I have an uncle who I love very, very much, but he is an addict. And even after he stopped drinking and, like, doing drugs, he's still an addict. Like, he is obsessive with whatever he does. And when you're an addict, something that happens that changes your mind is like you just need to have something that you're constantly filling yourself with. And so, like, you will, like, switch your addiction from one thing to another. So maybe you're not addicted to drugs or alcohol anymore, but maybe you're addicted to Diet Coke, or maybe you're addicted to exercise, or maybe you're addicted to your job or working or money or acceptance or something. And addicts have, like, a very specific set of, like, habits that they have. And a lot of those habits are very, like, unhealthy parasitic habits, which we see with James a lot. And I'll go into that more when we get to James. But an addict who is, like, actively in addictions with addictive substances, they're parasites. Like, they just are. So, like, James, you have him in Justine's section trying to get money from her, supposedly for a bus so he can go visit his brother, which is a complete lie, right? He's just trying to get money so he can get more drugs. Justine, her parasitic thing is she's an alcoholic. She's a functioning alcoholic, but she is an alcoholic. Something that I heard Dead Meat say that I thought was interesting was they were also like, you know, she's a single woman, no kids, and so certain people in society would consider her a parasite on society because she's not, quote unquote, contributing to the future by having kids, right? Josh Brolin's character, I don't think there's anything parasitic in his kind of like life immediately. James is straight up an addict. And then Marcus Miller, who is the principal Miller, he is a gay man. And so you could consider, like, if you're using the same rule as, you know, Justine, he's someone who's not, you know, I don't believe this, but, you know, some people would say, like, well, he's a parasite on society because he's not giving back, because he's not giving into the future by having kids because he's gay, which, very stupid. Those are, like, very dumb. And I don't think Zach Cregger's is really that deep with it, to be honest. Like, I don't think he's going that deep, but the ultimate big bad is a parasite. And I'll get into that in a bit, but definitely she is a parasite. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here already, is like these whispers of like parasite, of literally an organism that lives off of taking from another organism. So then we cut to Archer, and Archer is clearly like again, the writing in this movie is so good. Also, the score is so good. I haven't said that yet, but the music for this movie is really amazing. So like, Archer is sleeping in his son's bed, his son who went missing. His son's name is Matthew, right? And his wife literally just peeks in the door and is like, I'm going to work, and leaves. And so you can kind of tell from that like his marriage is falling apart. And then he goes to work and owns his own construction company. And his guys are like, this is fucked up, and this is fucked up, and this didn't happen, and we need this, and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, that is all my bad. I'm so sorry. So clearly his life is falling apart. He also goes to the police station. He's the one who stood up in the parent meeting before they opened the school and was like, that bitch had something to do with it, probably. The teacher, that is. And so he goes to the police and he tells them, like, I think she's a troubled person. I think we need to look into her more. Like, it's crazy that she's just running around free. And the police chief, or whoever he is, which he's played by Toby Huss, who was in Halloween 2018 as the dad, who does not make it. So I love when he's in a movie as like a background character. Like, he is like top tier horror movie background character material. I just love him. Anyway, he's like, I've questioned her extensively. And he's like, oh, well, do you know her background? Have you looked at her history? And he's like, of course I have. Like, I'm a cop. That's what I'm going to do, obviously. But he's like, she's had 2 DUIs. And he brings up that she was fired from the old school she worked at for inappropriate relationships. And the police officer goes, with another faculty member. So he's like basically reaching for straws here. And we got from Principal Miller that she did have some inappropriate interactions with students, and not like flashing her shit at them or something, right? Like, her inappropriate actions is like her taking a student home, her hugging a student. And it's so unfortunate because, like, I personally, like, I get it why those are considered inappropriate actions. And, like, it makes me really sad that you can't just take a kid home, that you can't just hug a kid. But I've worked with children for probably as long as I have been alive. Like, I've been working with kids for at least 25 years, and I'm only 30 years old, right? Like, and that's because my mom was a children's pastor for a long time. And so growing up, I understood, like, adults have to cover their own asses, unfortunately. Like, not only do you not want a kid to be uncomfortable, but you also don't want any false allegations against you, because trying to prove or disprove any of that stuff is really hard. And once someone throws a stone, everyone's going to throw a stone. Like, ever, like, someone throws a stone and you've still got a big welt on your head. Like, that's just how that works. And so, like, I have a friend who, she's not, like, a friend of mine. She's a friend of my mom's. And I love her very much. She's basically, like, another aunt to me. But she worked at a preschool, and there was a kid who accused her of touching them. And that was so traumatizing for her and very upsetting for her, because she was like, I would never do that. And my mom was like, of course you wouldn't. But the thing is, like, the psychology of kids in those situations is very different than, like, normal kid behavior, right? Like, kids in that situation, 9 times out of 10 are going to name someone who is actually a safe person. So then the police start investigating and they get help. So a kid is terrified usually of their actual molester being named, because 9 times out of 10, probably actually 99 times out of 100, you have the molester or, you know, the pedophile has threatened that kid, or the abuser. Like, sometimes it's just you're beating on your kid, but they've threatened that child. And so that child is not comfortable naming them because they've been threatened, and kids take those things to heart. And so, like, as an adult, you have to recognize that could be me. Someone could make that accusation of me. So I cannot, unfortunately, I cannot do certain things for kids. I just can't. Like, if you're gonna hug a kid in a room full of adults because they're crying or something, like, that's a little bit different. But, like, you could never be one-on-one with a kid. Like, even me today, I would never be one-on-one with a kid, except, like, when I was a nanny, right? Because they did a background check on me, and they were like, we trust you with our kid, right? And even then, I was still really, like, uncomfortable with, like, a lot of physical contact with the kids. And one of the girls was very, like, physically affectionate. Like, she always wanted to be hanging on me and holding my hand and, like, hugging me. And, like, it was very uncomfortable for me at first, just because of what I've been through. But then also growing up with the knowledge of, like, a kid could accuse me and I don't want things to look weird. It's just very unfortunate that that's, like, a reality, but it is a reality. And Marcus brings that up to Justine, and she kind of brushes that off. So Josh Brolin here is, like, basically reaffirming why it's so important that in today's climate, adults don't be doing things like that, because she was fired for an inappropriate relationship with another staff member, not a kid, and yet he's bringing that up to use as ammunition against her, as a reason to suspect her, which, again, huge fucking leap from, like, DUI to you kidnapped 17 children, or you had sex with your principal and you kidnapped 17 children. Like, huge, massive leaps, my dude. Like, completely different scenarios. Like, that's definitely nowhere near being the same fucking thing. Anyway, the cop kind of brushes him off and is like, what do you know that we don't know? Which, fuck you for saying that, but I get it. Again, the whole cops don't want you involved in their investigations thing. I get why they don't, but also fuck you. So, you see that Archer, he got the wrong paint for the house he's constructing, and it's red paint that he got instead of green paint. So, he follows Justine home, and he follows her home, and you can just kind of, like, you don't see it, but you infer that he's the one who wrote witch on the side of her car. And so he has this weird dream where one thing he does is he rewatches because he has, like, a little ring camera or whatever it's called, and so he obsessively watches back the moment Matthew left the house. And so he just watches it again and again and again. And so he, being, like, a construction guy, maybe, like, an engineer kind of a guy, a little bit of a logic, mathematics kind of a guy, he pulls out, like, a map of the area, and he gets out a ruler, and he, like, draws a trajectory of where Matthew ran. So then he goes to a different family's house, and this is one of my favorite things ever. So he knocks on the door, and he's, like, talking to the wife, because she's the one who answers the door, and he's like, hey, I know we never talked before, I'm sorry, I'm just, like, hitting you up in the middle of the day like this, unannounced and everything, but, I heard that you had footage of your kid, Bailey, leaving the house that night, and I was wondering if I could look at it, and she's like, I'm not comfortable with that. So then he waits for the dad to come home, and it's Justin fucking Long, which is even better. So, because it's so fucking funny to me, because Josh Brolin's character, Archer, is literally like, I didn't win her over. I know I can win him over. Or else why would he remain there literally all day? He waits for him to come home. And it's so funny because the second he gets in the driveway, he gets out there and he's talking to Justin Long. He literally kind of says the same thing. Like, hey, can I look at that footage? And then we just cut to him looking at the footage, and the wife is, like, in the doorway in the background, like, hands on her hips, like, I can't fucking believe this. And it's so good. Like, it just cracks me up. Anyway, so he kind of gets, like, he does the same thing where he watches where Bailey's running off to. He gets, like, a mental and physical, like, kind of, like, reference points, and then he goes outside, and then he kind of, like, does a trajectory, and he intersects it with his map. So he's like triangulating. And so he's like, they would have, just assuming that they ran in a straight line, they would have gone to this area. And so he figures that out. Then he's like driving around. He's going to go do, I think, talk to another person. But then he sees Justine at the gas station. So he skirts on in there and he comes up to her. And this is the Benedict Wong scene that we've seen online. Where he's talking to her, and she's like, I don't think we have anything to say to each other. And he's like, oh, I think you're not saying anything. And she's like, this isn't about me. And he's like, that's the first honest thing I think you've said, you know, or whatever it is. And then Marcus comes out of fucking nowhere, and he's got that crazy look on his face of like bulging eyes, blood on his face, there's like black shit on his chin, and he just starts choking Justine. And we see, to his credit, Archer, like, steps in and tries to save her. And then we cut from that to Paul. And so Paul is a police officer. And Paul, again, like, his parasitic thing is that he's also an addict. And so, kind of background on Paul, he's talking to his wife, his girlfriend, his fiance, the woman he's with, Donna, on the phone, which I forgot to mention that Donna kind of confronted Justine earlier. It's not necessarily important to the plot. It's just interesting because then you see that, like, oh, he was definitely fucking lying. And then from his perspective, again, we see he's definitely fucking lying because he's talking to her on the phone and she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna come back early from this work trip, blah, 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 and I'll be ovulating Friday, so kind of like, you know, we can try, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay. He's kind of like annoyed with her, and he hangs up, and that's like the vibe you get. It's like, oh, fucking woman. And then he goes and tells her dad that the message she wanted to relay to her dad is his boss. It's Toby Huss. So that's kind of awkward and weird. So he goes out on the beat that day, and he sees James, who again asked for money for the bus ticket, didn't get any. He's looking in a window in the warehouse area of this town, and he's like, over his speaker on his vehicle, he's like, you know, police, stop what you're doing. And James takes off running, so Paul takes off after him. And so he stops James and tackles him, and at first it's really like a very civil interaction. Like, he's like, I'm so sorry, we went down a little hard there, are you okay? And so he's like, yeah, I'm fine. So he like helps him up, and then he's like, you know, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. He's being nice to James. We find out his name is James. And he's like, hey, James, I'm going to check your pockets and everything. Do you have any, you know, anything dangerous in here? Any guns, any knives, anything that's going to poke me? Like, no needles or anything? And he's putting on gloves as he's asking this, right? So, like, me, I've worked with, again, kids a lot. When I was a bus driver, they were like, never deal with bodily fluids, blood, vomit, spit, unless you have gloves on, because you just never know. You don't want to get a bloodborne disease. And so that's kind of the vibe you're getting from this. So he's putting on these gloves, so you can tell it's something that scares him. And he's like, am I going to reach into these pockets and find anything that's going to poke me? And he's like, no. So then he reaches into the front pocket in James's pants, and he is like, and pulls his hand out, and out comes this needle. And he's bleeding, and he just looks so enraged, and then he sucker punches James in the side of the head and knocks him out cold. And you're like, holy shit. Which, to be fair, if I was arresting a tweaker and a tweaker was like, no, I don't have any needles in there, and I got stabbed from a tweaker's needle, I would be furious. I would be so mad. Like, not that I'm, like, saying police violence is fine. It's not. Like, it's not okay that he punched him. But I get being that pissed off that you want to punch him in the head. I get that. Also, if you think someone is a drug addict, don't trust whatever they're saying. My mom literally had a drug addict come into her office literally every Sunday for like a couple of months and steal the children's offering from her office. And she put a camera in there and had this person on camera and then confronted the person and let them know, I have you on camera stealing the children's offering. Please stop doing that. And this person was like, no, I was borrowing your scissors. I didn't take anything. And my mom was like, I literally have you on camera taking that shit. And she was like, I didn't do that. So, like, you just can't trust drug addicts. Like, addicts who are in active addiction, you can't fucking trust them. And so, yeah, like, if you're worried about it, don't fucking check his pockets, man. I don't know what to tell you. Go put on, like, workman's gloves where it's not gonna, like, stab through. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, Paul punches this kid in the head, knocks him out fucking cold. He gets into the police car. He grabs the first aid kit really fast, and he's, like, squeezing the blood out of his finger and spraying himself, like, hoping upon hope that, like, you know, nothing got in his bloodstream. And then he looks up and notices the police cam, and so he unplugs it, which, like, buddy, it's too fucking late for that. It's way too late for that. So then he goes out and talks to James, and he's like, look, the way I see it, you did me wrong, I did you wrong. I'm gonna let you go. Never come back here again, though. Like, I never want to see you in this area ever again. And so James is like, okay. So he uncuffs him, he goes. Then Paul goes to his boss, who is his father-in-law, or potential father-in-law, you know. And they're in, like, a room together alone, and you can tell he explained what happened. And so the police chief, whoever he is, head honcho, he's like, so look, we can hope that that civilian says nothing. He was like, because that footage is going to get rewritten in 30 days. Like, something else is going to write over it. So we just have to wait 30 days, and this will all be gone. If he comes in before that, you're in a lot of hot water. Like, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's very unexcellent news for Paul. Then he gets a text from Justine. Oh my gosh, I blanked on her name. Gets a text from Justine that just says, hey. Then we cut to he's going to the bar. Then we cut to he's like, yeah, no, I'm trying to stay sober or whatever. Cut to they're fucking. So then cut to the next morning, he gets in his car. He goes to work. No, he doesn't go to work. He goes home. Gets in his car, he goes home. His girl Donna is there. And she's like, where have you been? And then she notices his clothes are, like, rumpled. And, like, she's like, where have you been? And you can tell it's not good. Like, he just doesn't say anything. And she's like, motherfucker. And so that's not great. Then he goes to work, and his father-in-law is, like, having a meeting with someone and gives him the evil eye through the glass there. And you're like, oh, no, that sucks for him. Then Paul gets in he's going out to his cruiser, and he sees James coming down the way. And he goes, hey, I fucking told you. So then James takes off running, and it's like cartoon Scooby-Doo style shit running. And he gets in his police cruiser and takes off after him. And then we cut to James, and you're like, this is so fucking random. But you know what? Life is random. And that's kind of a little bit what this is about too, I guess, because, like, Zach Cregger wrote this after, so he wrote this after Trevor Moore died. Trevor Moore was part of the Whitest Kids You Know, which was his, like, comedy sketch group. Trevor Moore fell off his balcony and died. I think he was, like, there's different reports. I think he was drunk, just supposedly just walked off the balcony, which I think is very suspicious and weird, personally. But Zach Cregger's kind of wrote this while dealing with that, and so I think just part of, like he said, like, life is very random, and so James seems like a very random person to take up his perspective now, but it all circles back in the end, because, like, this really is how, like, police investigations get solved in real life. Is like some random person is like, hey, I saw something weird one time, and then it ends up being, like, part of, like, this whole big shebang. Like, I had a friend who, like, on her college campus was like, there's a really weird guy over there, and she went to the RD and was like, what should I do? And the RD was like, do what you feel you need to do. So she called security, and security went out there, and then, like, 2 years later, my friend was getting, like, subpoenaed for a court case here. She came back, she gave her spiel. Turns out this guy was being weird. He was wanking it right there on campus, exposing himself to people. And so, like, yeah, she's just a rando in this situation. Like, he wasn't jerking it to her. She didn't see anything, but she was like, he just seemed out of place and was weird. And so I called security, and so she was like one of the lead witnesses. Anyway, that's just like the randomness of life. So James, he's kind of like that here. So we open up. Clearly, he's not got a ton of meth left. He's trying to get it out of his pipe. It's not really working. So then he calls someone I assume is like his brother or his sister, and he's talking to them. And this is after he asked Justine for the bus ticket, okay? Just want to make that clear in the timeline. So he calls up his brother. He's like, hey, I got a job, but I need clothes to get the job. So if you could just lend me some money. And they just hang up on him, which, let me just tell you, the way they wrote this drug addict and the way the actor, whose name is Austin Abrams, portrays him is so spot on. It's not even funny. Like, this is typical addict behavior. They're going to lie to you about, oh, this really good thing is happening. I'm getting my life back on track. I just need some money. It's always, like, with addicts who are in active addiction, it's always like, oh, I just need some money and then everything will be good. And I just need some money and everything will be good. Because, like, that's literally how their brain thinks. They just need some money so they can get their next fix and then things will be good. But then, like, they'll run out of drugs and then things are bad again. And so, like, they're literally just, their perspective is so narrowed by their addiction, and it's so short-sighted because of their addiction that, like, this is the way they think and act. And, like, to other people, it seems very shallow and it seems very shitty, and it is very shallow and shitty. But that's, like, their addiction is their world. So, like, they just live in that mode constantly, which is why it's hard for them to do things like hold jobs and things like that, because they're literally just surviving to their next fix. They're doing what they have to do to get to their next fix. That's what it's about, is the next fix. So as literally, like, as he's on the phone with his brother saying all this, he's going down the road and pulling on all these car door handles to see if there's one that's unlocked. And finally he gets one and he jumps in there, and he's got like a backpack. And so he's calling the same person, and he's like, hey, I just feel like I didn't get to explain myself. Like, you know, I'm really good. I can pay mom back. I just need the clothes and this money for the clothes so I can work this job. So, like, just call me back. And you're like, oh my God. So he's borrowed money from his mother for his habit, which is very normal of addicts, is they hit up all the people they love. Like, it really sucks, because if you love an addict, you have to give them tough love. Like, you cannot be soft on an addict. Like, you cannot help them monetarily. Like, you even getting them a job is you putting your neck on the line. Like, it is very hard to actually help an addict, because ultimately they have to want to help themselves, and that's very rare. And Zach Cregger's, I mean, his dad is an addict. So, like, that's kind of like the inspiration a little bit for all of this. So, like, he clearly knows addicts and addict behavior. So, like, the writing here is, like, very spot on, unfortunately. But anyway, so he takes this stuff down to the pawn shop and tries to pawn it, and the pawn guy doesn't want it because he doesn't think it's worth anything. Like, to be fair, the iPad is, like, cracked. So he gets nothing for it, which is what causes him to go looking in the warehouse district. The whole thing with Paul happens. And then he goes and breaks into a house. And this house, like, he's very good about, like, picking the house, because he sees that there's a ton of newspapers that have been thrown on the driveway and not collected. And he's like, okay, probably not a lot of people there. Then he goes up, newspaper on the window. Clearly this is Alex's house. Like, we know this. So probably there's some shit going on in there that he don't want anything to do with. But he's an addict, so he go in there. He goes in there, and he is like, it's so funny, because I'm like, the desperation of an addict would overcome all this creepiness to be like, I'm gonna keep searching in this house. Because, like, he goes up the window, and everything in this room is, like, piled on the one side that he's climbing in, which is a big red flag. That's really fucking weird. Then he goes into the kids' room, and there's some weird stuff going on in there. And he just grabs the kid's pillowcase and starts, like, trying to find stuff that he can pawn. So then he goes downstairs, and then he's looking around, and he's, like, grabbing the silverware and stuff. And there's tons of empty soup cans everywhere, which is so sketchy. Like, get out of there. That's like a homeless person is living there. Like, what are you doing? Then he's like, he's looking at the TV set area, and he finds like an Atari or something there. And he's going to grab that, and he turns around, and there's Alex's parents sitting on the couch, catatonic. And he like freaks out. He's like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. But then he realizes they're not like moving or reacting. And so he just keeps stealing things. And I was like, oh my God, dude, no. Get the fuck out of there. What are you doing? Like, you dumb as fuck, boy. Then he goes down to the basement, right? And I'm like, truly, only the desperation of an addict would get you down in that basement. Like, I would have been so gone, dude. And this guy is like, I'll just go check this basement real quick. He flips on the light, and there's all the missing kids. And then he turns around, and Alex's parents are moving toward him. So he finally gets the hint, tries to leave. The front door is locked. It's bolted. He unbolts it. He runs out of there, goes to the pawn shop, and while he's pawning this shit, he sees a poster behind the pawn shop owner, like, who's like counting all the stuff up, and he sees like $50,000 reward for information leading to finding these kids. And he's like it takes him a second. It's so funny because like literally addict brain, like this drug addict is so fried that like it takes him a second to register, like, oh my God, I just saw like all 17 of those kids in this basement. I fucking know where they are. I'm gonna get that reward. And finally when it clicks, he goes outside, and he like rushes outside with his money. And he calls up the number, and he's like, hey, so I know where those kids are. And it's so funny because, like, the conversation is hysterical. The conversation itself is so funny that he has with whoever's on the phone. And we only get his side of it, and it's amazing. He's like, hey, like, I know where all those kids are. No, I'm serious. Like, well, I mean, I've probably all of them. I mean, there was a bunch of them in there. And you're just like, what the fuck? So then he's like, how do I get the money, though? Because I'm kind of, like, phobic of police stations. I don't want to go there. And you're like, this guy is such an addict. And the way he's talking, like, whoever he's talking to, guarantee they know. Like, he's such an addict. Like, it's so obvious you're high on drugs, and you only care about the money because it's drug money, dude. Whatever. That's what leads him to walk to the police station, though, and that's when Paul sees him. And Paul does run him down and takes him down, and he's like, hey, the only reason I was going to the police station is because I know where those kids are, and I want the reward money. So, like, I can take you there. And so Paul is kind of like, So he puts him in the back of the police vehicle, the cruiser, and he drives over to Alex's house. And it's so funny because even then, like, James is like, wait, what if you just go in there and, like, how do I know you're not going to just, like, take the reward money for yourself? And you're like, what the heck, man? And Paul, like, doesn't even try to, like, help him out on that. He just leaves the car, and he's like, man, it's so funny. So then he goes in there, and clearly he's in there for hours because it's daytime when he knocks. The door opens. Again, anytime that door opens, I have anxiety because there's nothing you can see in that doorway. It's so dark. Paul steps into the house. Then it's nighttime, and James is still in the back of the police cruiser, and he's cuffed. This poor guy is cuffed, still in the back of the cruiser. And finally the door opens to the house, and Paul comes charging out. And James is like, oh no, this is bad. And I'm also like, oh no, this is bad. Like, I knew it was going to be bad, but oh no, it's bad. So Paul, like, throws open the door, grabs him by the ankles, and drags him away. And then we cut to Marcus, right? Which is, again, the principal. So we see he's on the phone and, like, shopping with his partner. And his partner, it's so funny because he's talking to Justine on the phone, and his partner is, like, holding up choices of things, and he's pointing to which one he wants, and they're just, like, preparing for their outing, or their, like, day in, or whatever the fuck. And so he's talking to her, and that's when we get the other side of the conversation, where Marcus is like, I will talk to them, and if something seems weird, like, I'll call in Alex's parents, I'll talk to them. Something seems weird, I'll call CPS. And if they don't show up, I'll call CPS. So this is finally, like, we've seen glimpses of things both through Josh Brolin's perspective and also Justine's perspective, and James now too, where we get, like, a flash of this weird looking lady, and she has, like, these micro bangs and this weird, like, curly bob, and it's very creepy. It's, like, really good character design, but she's very creepy. And finally, like, that ties in here, right? So he calls in for Alex's parents, and this lady shows up, this older lady with this weird bob and this horrible makeup, and she's like, I'm here for Alex. And he's like, you're not his mom? And she's like, no, I'm his aunt. But she says his parents have come down with consumption, which is, I guess, another term for tuberculosis. And so the principal's like, I thought people only got that on the Oregon Trail, ha ha ha. And they're both kind of like, ha ha ha. And it's really awkward and weird. And he's like, okay, but like, I really actually need to talk to his parents. Like, if like I can even come by the house if that makes things easier. But like, I need to talk to his parents specifically because you're not his legal guardian and I need to speak with them. And so you can tell this is upsetting to her. And so she's like, oh, well, I'll tell his parents and maybe they can come in and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay, cool. So then that Saturday, he's like at home with his partner and like they're eating and they're watching nature documentaries. And it's specifically about, it's so weird that I know what it's about, but it's about this fungus that's like a parasitic fungus that grows on these ants and it kills the ant. And then it overtakes the ant's body and it kind of puppeteers it and moves it so it can get more ants and the fungus can spread itself. Really bizarre that I even know that, but I just happen to know that horrifying fact. And that's what they're watching a documentary on, like I can just tell. So again, here is like the parasite stuff coming back in. So they're there, someone knocks on the front door, they answer it. It's Aunt Gladys, Alex's Aunt Gladys, and she's like, oh, thank goodness you're here, and blah, 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 and I had to run all the way here, and da-da-da, and I was hoping it wasn't too late, and yada yada, because Alex's dad said he can come in on Monday or whatever, blah, 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 can I have a glass of water? And Marcus is rightfully like, no, but his partner is like, of course you can have a glass of water, and lets her in, and I'm like, bro, you just fucked up. Like, you just done fucked up. Like, you don't let weird people into your house. Like, that's coming from a Floridian who, like, in Florida, you're surrounded by a bunch of random nonsense that, like, anything can happen. Like, a gator could knock on your door. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, you just never know what's gonna happen. Like, we one time in Florida had a guy knock on our door and was like, it was like 2 a.m. and he was like, I just need some money to pay for the repair of my semi-truck, which, again, it was like 2 a.m. And my dad was like, you know what, you're in luck because I'm a diesel mechanic. Let me just grab my tools and I'll walk over there with you and I can fix your truck. And the guy was like, and so dad closed the door, went and grabbed his tools, came back, guy was gone. So, like, you just never know. Like, clearly that was an addict just wanting money again. But, like, literally you just never know. You never know. And so, like, that's why you never let people in. You just never let random strangers into your house. They let this lady in. She asks for a glass of water again, except when he goes to get her a glass, she's like, can I get a bowl? And he's like, a bowl? And she's like, yeah. It's just like a weird idiosyncrasy. I don't even try to, like, explain it to people anymore, you know? So if you wouldn't mind. And he's like, okay. So he gets her a bowl full of water. And she's talking to them, and she pulls out this branch from her purse, and she cuts herself. She, like, wraps something around it, cuts herself, and, like, on the branch is already, like, a ribbon that we had seen the camera, like, zoom in on while she was in his office. And he's like, is that my ribbon? And then she cuts herself and snaps the twig in half, and then he goes and kills his partner. Like, he's strangling him, tackles him to the ground, strangles him, and just bashes his partner's face in with his own face, like, with his own forehead. And then you can see she's wrapping another, hair around this branch, and it's the teacher's. It's Justine's. And when she snaps that, he goes taking off out of the house, and they do that, like, faux Naruto run, which there is some imagery of birds in here, and, like, that reminds me of, like, flight. Like, the way their arms are out reminds me of, like, a bird who's not flapping its wings. Like, that's how you would portray that. If you were a kid and you were like, be a bird but don't flap your wings, that's what you would do. And so it's very much like this imagery of, like, I should be flying free and I'm not. It's very cool and very weird. Again, kind of low-key Naruto run, which makes it a little goofy, but, like, it still scares me, so it's fine. So this is when we get the scene where Marcus, the principal, attacks Justine at the gas station, and Josh Brolin's character Archer is there, and he tries to, like, stop everything. And it's, so from Josh Brolin's perspective, like, after he stops, actually, I think it's this. So after he stops Marcus, he slams Marcus into, like, that door, that glass door in the gas station, which it's so funny because then Justine runs out, and as she's running out, the clerk is like, get out of my store, and she goes, fucking help me. Which, like, yeah, what is your fucking problem? And so I think that has to do with the theme of the movie, which, bear with me, because the more I'm talking about it, the more I think this is, like, the underlying theme of the movie, because the movie is called Weapons, and we see, like, weapon imagery, and, like, what's being weaponized is these people. But anyway, let me just continue, because I'll get to that at the end. So, she runs out, she gets in her vehicle and zooms out of that gas station. Marcus takes off after her. Josh Brolin comes out. He's clearly been cut on his arm, but he's still like, fuck this fucking guy. And he's going after Marcus too. Like, he's going to try and run this guy down and stop him, which is super sweet of him. So then as Archer is like following Marcus, they're blowing through stop signs and red lights. And I knew it was going to happen. Which it's so funny because Josh Brolin gets in his truck, right? And I'm like, oh, homeboy has a Dodge Ram. Like, this guy is dead. If he catches up to Marcus is just a speed bump. Like, that ain't gonna do shit. Like, he is not gonna live. Plot twist, which not really much of a plot twist. This other car comes out of nowhere, like, crossing the intersection and slams into Marcus and explodes his fucking head. And, like, we don't see it happen where, like, his head explodes, but, like, we see the aftermath of, like, he's dead on the ground, his head's, like, exploded. And then Josh Brolin, clearly he's in the ER, he's explaining things to cops. He gets out of his room, and there's Justine, and they talk, and, like, this is when they kind of, like, connect. And Archer is, like, this is when it kind of clicks for Archer, too. Like, Archer's like, can I show you something? And so he's like, so that guy came at you like a homing missile, and he's walking the same way that my son walked when he left the house. And again, Justine's not a parent to any of these kids, so she doesn't, and she was a suspect, so she doesn't have access to these videos. So, and that stuff's not made public until the case is over. So she has no idea that they're not Naruto running out of their house in the middle of the night. Like, she just knows they left. So he explains to her, like, that is exactly how my son left the house. And so he's like, I've kind of triangulated where they would have gone if they were going in a straight line. And she's like, oh my God, that's Alex's house. And he's like, what? And she was like, literally the house you circled is Alex's house. So they go over there. Then we cut to Alex's perspective. And this is when we're like charging toward the end of the movie, and we're getting some answers. We don't get all the answers, right? So Alex has a very loving family, his mom and his dad is driving him to school, or taking him home from school, and he's like, which earlier Alex got on the bus and Justine followed the bus. And I thought that was suspicious, because, like, let me just say, as a child whose parents went through something traumatizing and their kids went through something traumatizing, you would not let your kid ride the bus. I'm sorry. You just fucking wouldn't. Like, if your kid is one of 18 and the 17 of the other 18 went fucking missing in the middle of the night, you're not letting your kid ride the bus. You're not letting your kid out of your sight, dude. Like, you're gonna do whatever you have to do to be there to pick up and drop off your kid. Like, so the fact that he was riding the bus, I was like, that's suspicious. And that was also, like, the time when Justine looked in and saw the parents just sitting there. And so I'm like, okay, something's not right. We see that his dad usually does pick him up from school and drop him off. So he's picking him up from school, and he's, like, explaining, which, again, we get some moments right here of, like, Alex being bullied. And it's so funny because it's Josh Brolin's kid, Matthew, who's bullying him the most. And just cracks me up. Because, like, Josh Brolin's thing was, like, he tells his son, like, I'm sorry, like, you know, I never told you I loved you. I wasn't there for you. I was, you know, and it's kind of implied that, like, he was working. And so that's, again, a form of addiction. Like, if you're addicted to work so much so that you're not taking care of your family, it is a problem. And so he feels bad because he wasn't there for his kid. He didn't know what his kid was going through. And so then we see him bullying, and it kind of makes sense because his dad's not around much. His dad doesn't invest much time into him. And then Alex does not tell his parents about this bullying. Like, he does not communicate that at all. And again, I think it's just because Alex is one of those, if I keep my head down and keep plugging along, this will pass too kind of personalities. So as he's in the car with his dad, he's like, why is Aunt Gladys coming to stay with us? And he's like, well, Aunt Gladys isn't well, and, you know, she doesn't have a lot of family, and your mom wants to help take care of her and be there for her. And he's like, well, I don't know Aunt Gladys. And he's like, honestly, neither do I, but, you know, that's family is important, and that's what family is for. And this is, I think, an important line to understand what Weapons is about, in my theory, in my view. Anyway, fast forward to that night, Aunt Gladys comes in, and she is not looking good. And Alex peeks in on her the next morning. She is not looking good. Like, homegirl is, like, gonna be seeing The Undertaker next. Like, that's her next date, bro. So, like, the next day, Alex's dad drops him out of school, is like, I'm gonna be by at 2 o'clock to come get you. You know, so just be waiting for me. So then 2 o'clock rolls around, and his dad's not there to pick him up. And time is going by. There's less cars in the parking lot. Clearly the faculty are leaving, and his dad still isn't there. Which, this is, for me, the most unbelievable part of the movie. Because, like, if a kid doesn't get picked up, he goes to aftercare. And if he doesn't get picked up from aftercare, the like, facility, the school calls the parents. And if there's no response, then they call, like, emergency contacts. And so, like, the fact that this kid is just standing there and no one is, like a teacher comes by and is like, hey, do you need a ride? And he's like, no. And just walks home, which is the second most unbelievable part of this whole thing. Because, like, I've been left at school. I'm the middle child. Just happens. It is what it is. Literally, I called my dad, like, hourly for, like, 4 hours almost. And homeboy did not answer the phone once, only because, like, well, probably because he was sleeping, but also because his phone wouldn't let him pick up calls. He could only receive voicemails because he broke his phone. And still nothing. So then when he wasn't responding, I called my mom, and my mom came and picked me up, right? So, like, that's kind of like what would happen here. So I went from school to aftercare, tried getting a hold of dad during aftercare a couple times. He still didn't respond. Then after, I was literally the last kid at the school. And so there were 2 staff members waiting with me because, again, you can't be alone with a kid in this day and age. And so I had, unfortunately, 2 adults who I was wasting their time because my dad was asleep. He woke up. My sister was going to wake him up. He woke up and went, oh no, I'm running late, and booked it out of the house. She thought he was going to go get me. Homeboy was going to go to football practice because he was, like, a little league coach. Not little league, but, like, you know, a league of elementary students. That's where he was going. That was what was more important to him than getting his daughter from school. I don't hold any bones about it, but I do make fun of him for it. Anyway, that's kind of the procedure. You would not just let a kid walk home from school in this situation. Also, if I were that kid, there's no way in hell I'm fucking walking home. I'm like, you need to call somebody because I'm not walking home. That's dangerous. Also, where the fuck are my parents? They could be dead. That's me in that situation. So this is, like, the most unbelievable part of the movie. Even, like, beyond all the witchcraft shit, this is still the most unbelievable part. Anyway, carrying on. Alex gets home, and his parents are catatonic. And Aunt Gladys is like, I'm making you dinner, and he backsasses her, so she's like, that's it, go upstairs, no dinner for you. He goes upstairs. Next morning, he comes down. She's like, sit down. His parents are still in the same spot wearing the same clothes. So she's like, sit down. He sits down. And this is before all the kids go missing, okay? Because we keep jumping back to the beginning of the story for each character. So the beginning of Alex's story is before all 17 of those kids go missing. Like I said, he was bullied by Matthew, who was one of the missing kids. So clearly that's where we're at. So Aunt Gladys is like, I have the power to make your parents do whatever I want them to. She shows him. She makes the parents pick up their forks and just start stabbing themselves in the face, like, over and over and over again. He's freaking out. So she's trying to get him to promise he won't say anything about her existence to anyone. He's too, like, traumatized by watching this. He can't say that. So she stops it, and she's like, I need you to promise. I need you to say you promise. And he was like, I promise. And she explains to him, like, I can make your parents do whatever I want them to. They can even eat each other. And she's like, I don't want them to do that, do I, Alex? And so he's like, kind of like, no, I'll stay quiet. So he goes to school. Everybody's loud. This is the part that really connects with me on a level of, like, the person who wrote this has been hurt deeply by a family member. Because, and they've gone through something traumatic. Because this is what it's like when you're a kid going through trauma. Like, you go to school and everybody else is loud and noisy and they're doing their tests, and you're just sitting with the horror you're living in. Like, you're just sitting with the trauma. Like, you're like looking around at everyone else and you're like, how are they so normal? How are they not affected like how I am being affected? Like, it's mind-blowing to you as a child to be like, I am surrounded by people who know nothing of this problem, who have never dealt with this problem, and probably, like, never will. And that is just, like, mind-blowing, because they're, like, to you, it's your whole world falling apart, and you're doing everything you can to just, like, hold the little pieces together so you don't lose them and they don't, like, just spread everywhere. And so you're, like, all your focus is on that, whereas they're like, what are you doing after school today? I got this video game. And you're just like, how is that your focus? Like, that is so unreal. Like, that is such a fake thing to give a shit about. And this movie kind of, like, lightly touches on that just by portraying Alex in the classroom, because he is so quiet compared to all the other kids. Because, I mean, like, in my situation, I got help, like, almost immediately, like, 3 weeks after the initial happened, I got help. So, like, Alex is not getting help, and so his whole world is trying to keep this giant traumatizing secret and hold his shit together. That's crazy. And everything changed for him literally overnight, which is literally how it works. One moment changes your whole fucking life, and you're like, I have to live with this now, and this is my reality, and this is what I'm dealing with, and it's shit. And everybody else is worried about something fucking stupid, and I have to worry about, like, are my parents gonna kill themselves before I get home? Like, that's Alex's reality. And it's so, like, the movie does it in such a cool, mute, beautiful, like, just, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Subtle. That's the word I'm looking for. It does it in such a subtle way, and I love that. So, like, me, I'm watching this and I'm like, someone who wrote this is writing this from this kind of experience. And as someone who's also had that kind of experience, like, of a trauma, and you're a child and you're just trying to live your life and everybody's, like, living their lives normally and you're not, like, this is just such a cool, this is a cool way to do it and portray it, and it's very realistic, and I love that. So shout out to Zach Cregger for going there, because it's not easy, especially when it's your experience you're driving, or you're, you know, pulling from. Anyway, so Alex is going to school, and then he's going home, and his Aunt Gladys is like, you need to feed your parents soup, and she's doing weird shit in one of the rooms in the house, and she's got this tree, and this tree is very thorny, and she had Alex's dad bring it in the night before, you know, and so clearly this tree holds power for her, and so she told him, no talking, just feed your parents and then go to bed, and there's soup in the kitchen, feed them that, feed yourself that, and get more tomorrow. So literally Alex is, like, having to be his own adult. He's taking care of his parents. He's going to school. He's going to the store. He's buying more soup. He's coming home. He's feeding his parents. He's doing his Aunt Gladys's will. And Aunt Gladys is like, he's sleeping one night and she hears him calling out to him. So he goes in there to her special room with the tree, and she's, like, puking black gush into, like, a bucket. And she's like, I'm very sick. And he is so, like, he's so adult about it. Like, his thinking is so very grown up. Like, and it's very cool to just portray that, because when you go through a trauma, you do grow up faster than all the other kids. Like, you just have to. So he looks at her and he's like, do you want to go to the hospital? And she's like, no, they can't help me there. And he's, like, asking some very grown up questions that, like, a third grader, so, like, an 8-year-old would not normally think to ask, and that's where he's at right now. So she tells him, I thought your mom and dad could make me better, but they didn't. And she was like, maybe if you bring me a personal item from all of your classmates at school, maybe they can make me better. And he goes, will you leave if you get better? And she was like, yeah, I'll leave if I get better. So the next day, while all the kids are playing in the gym, he sneaks out and goes back to the classroom. And this is, like, probably the second most unrealistic thing in this movie, aside from, like, Witchcraft, which, again, I still think is more believable than this happening. So he sneaks out. All the students have, like, their names, and, like, they've colored and decorated their own nameplate and put it on their cubby. He takes all of those off and shoves them into his backpack. So he literally has one from each of his classmates. Super simple, super easy, super smart of him. The teacher comes in, Justine, and Justine, who was in the gym with the kids, comes into just him and is like, hey, what's going on? And he was like, oh, I just forgot something. And she's like, if something's going on, you can tell me. Like, you can talk to me, right? And he's just like, yeah, I just forgot something. I'm going to go back now. And so, like, the unrealistic part of this is a fucking teacher letting a student just walk down the hallway, not noticing him. Like, I don't care if you have 18 kids. If you're in one room, you position yourself by, like, a door, and you position yourself so you can see all the other doors, so you know when a kid is trying to leave. Like, you just do. And then, on top of that, she leaves all the other kids to go find this one kid in this classroom. And, like, you just wouldn't fucking do that. Like, maybe she called in another adult to watch those kids. I don't really know. But she was the only adult in there that I could see. That's not okay. Anyway, moving on. He drops all that shit down at Aunt Gladys's door. And later that night, he finds her, like, ripping up some chunks of them and putting them, like, she'll take one nameplate, rip a couple pieces off, put it in her little bowl, and then put the nameplate aside and then, like, do the next one. And so he's like, what are you doing? And she doesn't respond to him. She just carries on with her ritual. And then once she finishes, she walks out the front door with him, and they just stand there and wait. And that's when we see, like at the beginning, there was this, like, really cool, like, song playing while the kids were running out, and, like, now it's creepy music, and they're running towards the house, and, like, they just are running past Alex and Aunt Gladys, and Alex looked over at her, and he is fucking horrified, because he did not realize, like, this is really how things were gonna go down, right? Because he's, like, fucking 8 years old. Anyway, so that happens. Then Alex is the only one. You see that she does up Alex's dad's face, so, like, the fork marks are kind of, like, hard to see. And she goes with him to the meeting with the detectives at the school, and she's like, oh, he had a stroke, so, I'm here in place, of his mom, because his mom's busy, blah, blah. And so Alex is, like, very much watched by the aunt, which this, again, is very much written by someone who has been abused by a close family member, because this is how it fucking goes down if you're not careful. Like, if like that family member who's doing the fucked up shit, they are hovering. They are doing whatever they can to get the kid to not speak. They're threatening the kid. They're doing whatever they need to do. And, like, it's insane to me, because, like, this also speaks to how healed I am from my trauma, right? Like, that's the kind of shit that the person who trafficked me would say to me. That's how they acted. That's what they wanted. Like, they wanted to be the number one person in my life so they could do that. Luckily, my mom was too smart for that. God bless her. Like, she was hip to that stuff. She was like, motherfucker, I know you're weird. And then found out she was the one trafficking us. She was like, fuck that. So, like, this should have triggered me, but it didn't. But I was just, like, mind blown by how accurate it is, because that is exactly what an abuser does, is they want to elevate themselves in your life. And they also are going to make claims of, like, which, not that Aunt Gladys wouldn't do it, because she fucking would. But, like, they're going to make claims like, I'll kill your parents. I'll kill the rest of your family. No one you love will ever see you again. Like, that kind of thing. And so, like, just very accurate portrayal, very chilling. Yeah. So now we are, like, sprinting toward the end of the movie, right? We see that Aunt Gladys had, like, ripped off all the newspaper from the windows and made Alex clean. When the detectives came to the house, she also sent the kids out of the house for the day and then brought them back to the basement. We see, like, Alex has to now feed all 17 kids soup, which we get, like, a shot of him feeding specifically Matthew, which I think is, like, that is so, like, it's saying a lot. Like, it's a very powerful, I think, just really subtle, very powerful moment that, like, this kid is feeding his bully. Like, that's how mature he is he's, like, overcoming that, because he's, like, he could use this moment to, like, torment his bully, but he's more mature than that, and, like, realizes, like, this is life or death for all of them. And so, like, that says a lot about who Alex is, right? So then, fast forward to the night that Archer and Justine are pulling up to the house, the night that Paul is there, and now James is enthralled by Aunt Gladys. And Aunt Gladys says to Alex, like, pack your things, we're leaving in the morning. And so then she tells him not to step over the salt barrier. So his parents are standing guard at her door, basically, and there's just a line of salt in front of them. Like, between him and them, there's this line of salt that's, like, close to that door. And they're just standing there, right? So in comes Justine and Archer. And they come in because they notice there's a police car out front, and he's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, do we go in? Do we stay here? And she's like, I don't really know. And then the door opens and Paul steps out. And again, every time the door opens, I have anxiety because you can't see anything in there. Paul steps out and does the weirdest, most awkward, most clearly, like, not okay motion for them to, like, come inside. And I was like, fuck that, it's a trap. You need to call somebody. That's a fucking trap. Like, no. But they're like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess we go in. And I'm like, no, you fucking don't. No, you don't. Especially, why don't either of you have a gun? Like, I understand Justine's on a teacher's salary. She's spending a lot of money on alcohol. But, like, Josh Brolin, you clearly have money. Why did you not bring a gun? Someone should have brought a gun. Preferably a shotgun. This is just stupid. So, in they go. They step over a salt barrier. Paul and James attack them. Paul attacks Justine. James attacks Josh Brolin. And this is the scene that, like, the people in my theater were kind of laughing at, because Josh Brolin knocks out James, and he gets knocked out cold, and then comes back up and is like, ah, and then he knocks him out again, and then he's like, ah, and he knocks him out again, and he's like, god damn, and his, like, fist is hurting. So then when he wakes up again, he, like, kicks him, and he wakes up again, and he throws him, and it's just like, it's like physical dark comedy, and it's just so good. Meanwhile, Justine is being choked in the kitchen and is literally using a potato peeler on Paul's fucking face, which is insane. It is gnarly, dude. That's clearly not working out. Paul grabs it out of her hand and throws it and continues to choke her. She somehow grabbed his gun and she shoots him in the throat, and it just, like, starts gurgling out of there, and he's still choking her because, like, he's still got life in him. So then she puts it up to the side of his head and blows his brains out, and he immediately falls and dies. So then James gets the better of Archer, and he's knocked him into, like, the entrance to the basement, and so he's, like, choking Archer, and Archer can't get him off, and then Justine returns the favor from Marcus's almost, murder, and shoots James in the head and kills him. So then Josh Brolin goes into the basement. She goes upstairs to check on Alex. Alex has stepped over the salt on purpose. His parents have gone berserk. They're coming after him. So he's running from room to room. They're tearing through the doors. And, like, there's a very obvious Shining reference when his mom peeks in. First of all, it's really good. Second of all, kind of, like, on theme. Third, it's really terrifying. Like, it's actually genuinely, like, because their faces are fucked up. And something that I think is interesting that I probably should have mentioned sooner, but, like, everybody's eyes are red. All these, like, puppet people. And it's like, it's so, like, it's because they don't have the freedom to even blink. Like, none of them blink. And it's because, to Gladys, the parasite, they are just a tool to get what she needs. So she doesn't even care for them enough to be like, you can blink, by the way. Which is so very fitting. Anyway. So he's running from room to room. Finally, he gets, like, around his parents, because of the way the, like, house setup is. He gets into his Aunt Gladys's room with the tree. He grabs the branch, grabs the stuff that's, like, controlling the kids downstairs, and he runs into the bathroom of that room. And so he's seen her do the ritual, because she was like, watch, Alex, and when she, like, had his parents stab their faces with a fork. So he does what she did and snaps the branches. He has a piece of her hair wrapped around the branch, which means all 17 of those fucking kids go after her. But so Josh Brolin, in the meantime, like, that happens. Josh Brolin's in the basement, right? He's looking for his son, Matthew. He finds Gladys, who's, like, Gollum style, crouched there, and she, like, leaps on him and grabs something of his and quickly does the ritual. So then he's choking out Justine. Justine, at that point, is, like, low-key dying. So that's actually when the ritual with the kids happens. Gladys is like, oh shit, and because she hears them, like, charging up the stairs, so she goes running, and this is when the theater was busting out. It was so good. This scene is so fucking fun because it's Gladys, this old decrepit lady, like flailing and running, trying to get away from 17 third graders. And these third graders are like, just like her puppets. They are like one-track minded, homing pigeon, like coming for her. So they're like busting through windows. She's literally running through people's houses, like opening their doors, going in the back, going out the front, and these kids are just busting through the fucking windows. She's like running through, like opening gates and fences and closing them, and the kids are just tearing the whole fucking fence down, and they're running after her, and she's screaming, and it's like, it's so good. And finally, one of them gets her down, and they just start ripping her apart, and they fucking rip her to pieces. It's awesome. So then, once she's ripped to pieces, her control over Josh Brolin is gone. And he, like, acts like he didn't even know what he was doing. Like, it doesn't, like, he drops Justine, and then, like, it's a reset. He's like, where's Matthew? And goes after Matthew. And I don't even think he remembers what he was doing in the moments he's choking Justine. Like, that's how under her control he was. So he goes looking for Matthew. He finds Matthew with the other kids, having just ripped Gladys apart. He picks up his son. This is actually when Justine goes upstairs and she finds Alex hugging his parents, who are still catatonic. And then we get the kid narrator back. And she goes, you know, Alex's parents are being fed soup somewhere, just not by him, which is an insane fucking line. I love it. And then she's like, he's also living with a different aunt, who I hear is actually nice, but he moved to like a different city. And then she says, you know, the kids... At the beginning, she had said the kids never came back, right? And that's very true. So even though they found these kids, she's like, only some of them have started talking just this year. And it was like 2 years ago that this happened. So they're just now starting to maybe heal a little bit from this. And that's kind of like the end of the story. And first of all, I love it. I love this movie. I love the ending. Literally, them chasing Gladys is so fucking great. I love it. It's like amazing. So I think the weapons in this movie, right, because like it's about Gladys turning things that aren't weapons into a weapon. And what is the thing she's turning into a weapon? Well, if you're in a situation like Zach Cregger's was with his dad, right, or any situation with any addicts, the thing they weaponize against you is your relationships with them and your relationships with other people. And so that is exactly what Gladys is weaponizing in this movie. Like, there's some imagery of like, there's like a big AK-47 and over his house, Josh Brolin's house and Josh Brolin's dream. But it's not really about school shootings. Like, that falls apart at some point. I think the real allegory and the real message is the weaponization of what? Right? And you think maybe, oh, it's the kids, they're weaponizing the kids, but that's not true, because if that were the case, if that were like the message, like, oh, they're weaponizing the kids, then honestly Justine would be part of it, and so would the police, but they're not, because it would have to be like this big grand conspiracy, because like not one person can weaponize so many kids. Like, she had no connections to these kids except Alex. She weaponized Alex. And how did she weaponize Alex? By weaponizing his parents. And so it's because of that relationship that Alex did any of the things he did. And so that's also how this parasite got into the family. That this parasite had the ability to weaponize these parents. And so the thing that's being weaponized in Zach Cregger's weapons is relationships. That's what's being weaponized. And I love that. The more I talked about this, like, I just came up with that probably like 30 minutes ago, and it was just something that dawned on me the more I was talking about this, is literally, and especially Zach Cregger said this is like about addiction and how it kind of affects people, and that is, I think, what he was trying to say. And even he was like, I'm not gonna give clear answers because like sometimes there just aren't any, but I think that's what he was trying to say without knowing he was trying to say that, because that is literally what happens when you have parasites, when you have addicts in your life. Like, they weaponize your relationship with them and your relationship with other people to suit their needs, to fill their desires. And so like with Aunt Gladys, we never really know what sickness she has. Like, she has a wig, that's the mini bangs, and then she has like weird scraggly hair left over on her bald head. And so you're like, oh, is it like leukemia? Is it some kind of cancer? Like, what is going on? My takeaway is that it's the witchcraft. The witchcraft is her addiction. And so because she hasn't gotten close to anybody, because they literally are like, the parents talk about, like, it's either here or she's out on the street. And so because she's not close to anyone who actually has things she wants, she has been not practicing her witchcraft, and that's her, like, addiction. That's what's killing her, because that is what addiction does, is it eventually kills you. It ends all good relationships around you, and it even takes, like, your health away at some point. I had an uncle who literally died because his liver stopped functioning because he could not stop drinking. Like, he moved in with my grandparents. He was my great uncle. He moved in with my grandparents to stop drinking. And they would find trash bags full of empty NyQuil bottles because they wouldn't allow alcohol in the house. And he knew NyQuil had alcohol in it. So he would go, oh, I'm just very sick. And he would go out and buy 30 and 40 bottles of NyQuil and drink those instead. And so eventually my grandparents had to kick him out of the house too, because they were like, we can't just have you living here rent free and you're just drinking. Like, we're not going to do that. Check yourself in somewhere. And he never did, and he ended up dying of, like, liver and kidney failures. Like, his body just shut down on him. And so that's what happens with addictions. And so my guess is that that's what's happening to Gladys, is her addiction is what's actually killing her. But to quote unquote get better, because, like, even if you watch, like, The Haunting of Hill House, like, Luke, the drug addict's son, talks about he needs one last hit. They call it getting well. So you need to get well before you get well. And so that's, like, kind of, I think, what's going on here is Aunt Gladys is like, this is going to make me well. Like, this is going to fix me. And that's all addicts know at that point. Like, especially if you're an addict as old as Gladys is, like, your addiction is the only thing that you have. And so if you're not getting your fix, you're nothing. Like, you've got nothing. And so she is a parasite in that way of, like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get my addiction fixed, like, to get my fix. And so in order to do that, she needs to weaponize both her relationship with her niece and then her great nephew's relationship with her niece and her nephew-in-law. And so, like, that's what Zach Cregger's really, I think, is getting at. Even if he didn't do it intentionally, that's kind of, like, the takeaway from this movie. And again, I just think it's very awesome. I think it's very well done. I think it's definitely, like, you can tell if you're someone who's been in that situation and in that lifestyle and had to deal with those types of people, like, that he's coming from a place of personal experience. Like, all of it rings very accurate and very true. And, like, it really resonated with me because I was like, oh, I've lived that. Like, I know what that is. Like, I know what he's talking about. And especially hearing that he's like, the base of the movie is addiction. I'm like, that's what addicts do, is they weaponize relationships with people in order to get what they want. And so, just a very cool movie, very cool allegorically. I'm sure I don't have all of it figured out, so if you've got some kind of theory, leave it in the comments below. Check me out on YouTube. I'm Beware the Moon Podcast there, Beware the Moon Podcast on Rumble as well. I'm Beware the Moon Podcast on Substack now. You can hit me up on Twitter at Beware Moon and just let me know what you think of this one. Let me know if you listen to this and you're, like, excited to see it, or if you, like, weren't excited to see it but now you are, or maybe you're still not excited to see it, or maybe you saw it and you're like, hey, I agree, I disagree. Just let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this, please leave it a like, please share it. That helps greatly with channel and all of that stuff. And if you really liked it, give it a follow. And again, I'm sorry for, like, the long absence. It's just been a crazy summer. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see y'all in the next one.